Have you ever played around with Ableton and wished that you had more hands-on control for a lot of the features, the navigation, transport controls, all sorts of that stuff to just give yourself more tactile control over your DAW? Well, in this video, we're going to dive deep into the APC40 Mark II by Akai, which is a MIDI controller designed especially for Ableton. So if you have one or if you've been interested in checking one out, stay tuned for this video. So if you have one in your home studio or you've been scoping one out for a potential new addition to your home studio with Ableton, stay tuned. Let's talk about it. Let's transition to the hands. So this controller right here is the one we'll be talking about, the APC40 Mark II, designed by Akai especially for Ableton. So it has super in-depth integration with the DAW, gives you a bunch of hands-on controls for all sorts of things, which we will go over in this video. So if you've ever wanted to have more hands-on control and let go of the mouse and get more tactile with your music production, the APC40 Mark II is a great choice. And extra bonus, it is a deadly combo if you combine it with the Push 2, because you get a little bit more hands-on controls instead of having to do menu diving. Although the Push 2 can do everything that the APC can do, I think. It's nice to have the separation so you can do multiple functions at the same time. And let's talk about this APC40. Okay, so this MIDI controller has been specifically mapped for Ableton, which is a huge plus, that it comes straight out the box, mapped, pre-mapped to everything. Okay, so if we jump into our preferences, Command comma, in Ableton, you can pull up your MIDI controller. So all you have to do is plug it USB and then find it from the drop-down menu. And Ableton has a script that they've already designed for the APC40 Mark II right here. So you just select that, make sure that all the inputs and the sync is enabled so that it's getting MIDI clock from Ableton, and you're off to the races. All right, so now we have a couple loops recorded here. Let's go over the features that we'll see with the APC40 to really take Ableton to the next level. So the first set of features I want to talk about are what are called the mixer controls. So this is all things including volume, faders, track on, off, record, arm, solo, etc. So let's go ahead and demonstrate some of those. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play here to start playback in Ableton. And you'll notice that we have our microphone going. And I'm going to lower the volume. We have a Q volume here, which lets you control the volume of the metronome as well as any previews of your browser. Okay, and we can also turn on and off the metronome with this metronome button here. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it off. And now we have two loops playing, but we're not hearing anything because the volume of these tracks are down. So these are all representing the tracks that we see in Ableton. So if I select the first track, you'll see in Ableton, the first track is highlighted and it pops up on my Push 2. If we move over here, the second track is highlighted in Ableton, and then the corresponding instrument shows up on the Push 2. So this is a really sick integration just to start. But let's go ahead and go back to our drums and kick up the volume of our drum loop here. All right, so we have faders for all of the volumes of every track in our session, and it's super handy to have tactile control of volume instead of always relying on the mouse to control volume. Okay, so let's bring up the chords as well. All right, so now we've covered the track volumes that we have. The next feature I want to talk about is the turning on tracks on and off. So you'll notice that each of these numbers light up that represent the track count in our session, but you can turn tracks on and off simply by hitting this number. So let's go ahead and turn off the drum loop, bring it back in, turn off the keys, bring it back in. Super awesome. Next control is solo, so we can solo the drums. We can solo the keys, we can solo them both at the same time. This is super handy to quickly solo stuff. We can also record arm tracks directly from here, which is super handy. So you can simply hit record arm and then you're ready to go for recording a new clip. Okay? If we hop over to session view in the Push, you'll notice that when you hit record arm, you can simply select any clip to record to and it'll start recording. And these clip slots are the same thing that you see right here. All right, so this is kind of a mirror image. So I typically keep this in note mode, as this is representing session view right here. All right, so real quickly, I recorded a couple different loops with the same tracks, just duplicated them just to showcase this feature. So we can hit this A-B switch, and this will assign tracks to being either A or B or none. Okay, so to start off, all your tracks have no distinction between A and B, but if we go ahead and hit it once, when it is orange, it means we are assigned to A, but if we hit it again, then orange means assigned to B. So over here, these two will be assigned to A, being yellow, and then these two will be assigned to orange, being B. And now with this crossfader, we can actually mix between any track that is A, B, or have them all playing at the same time. All right, so let's give that a go. And I'm gonna launch the scene. So now we're only hearing these first two tracks. And if I go to B, we'll hear the other two tracks playing. How cool is that? And then you can have both in the middle. All right, so if we hit play, you'll notice that we have these knobs at the top of these tracks, which when it is selected on pan, we're controlling the pan of these tracks. So I can pan the drums to the left, to the right, back to the middle. Same with the keys. Keys are at the left now to the right, back in the center. So that is super handy to have hands-on panning really quick, just with these knobs. And of course, they're lined up with the corresponding track. So this is our drums, this is our keys, this is our second drum rack, etc. We can also control sends from the APC40. So if we go to this sends button, now these knobs will be representing sends instead of panning. Okay, so if I go ahead and turn up the send of track B here, you'll notice that it's turning up inside Ableton. So now we're getting more reverb on the sound. Right, we can also send the drums as well to the reverb. Right, get a little bit more vibiness. And you can also change what send you are manipulating. So if you hold the send button, you'll notice that the track selector defaults to going to 1. And what this is representing is the different sends that we have available. So this would be send A, send B, send C, send D, etc. Right? So right now we're on send A. So when I'm turning these knobs while we're on the send distinction here, we are affecting the send to the A send, which is a reverb. But if we hold send and hit the second track, now these send buttons will be sending B, which is to our delay. So let's go ahead and do that with our keyboard. Right, we can hear that delay. We can do the same thing with the drums, add some delay. Right, and if we want to go back to the first sends, we can just hold the sends button again and go back to send A. All right, the next set of controls I'm going to talk about are what are called the transport controls. So we looked at a few of these already, but let's go through them in more detail. So first and foremost, we have play and stop. So we have this play button, which will start playback. And if we hit it again, it will stop playback. Easy as that. It's handy to have it as a button instead of always having to use the space bar. If you really want to get tactile with your hands and let go of the mouse and keyboards, it's right there for you whenever you want. Next, we have the record button. So this will actually record to arrangement. So if I go ahead and hit this record button, it's actually going to play back whatever loops we have engaged, but it's going to record it to arrangement view. So if I hit tab and go to arrangement view, you can see that we are recording to arrangement right now. Okay, so that's what this record button, if I hit stop playback. Now if we go to arrangement view and hit back to arrangement button, you'll notice that we've printed these loops that we had playing onto arrangement, and we started to have an arrangement here. So we could go in here and edit stuff, take things out, play around with it, and start an arrangement right from here. Right, easy as that. So I'm just gonna delete that for now. Let's go back to session. And you'll notice we have a second record button here. This is actually session record button, okay? So if we hit play and we hit the session record button, so let's actually play these loops. So if we hit this session record button, you'll notice that whatever track we have selected started recording. Okay, so if I stop this clip and we hit session record, depending on what track I have, we're going to record a new clip. So let's go to this drum beat and let's hit session record, see what happens. So you'll notice that it pops up recording to the clip that we have playing. All right, so that's what session record does. You'll notice that when I toggle it off, now the clip is just playing normally. If we hit session record, now it's red and we are recording to that clip. So as you can see, it's super handy to have a session record button readily available so you can pencil in extra notes to your existing clips really quick. So let's say we wanted to record new notes to this existing clip. So let's go ahead and play this piano loop. Let's turn up the volume a little bit. So if we hit the session record button, you'll notice that this turns red. That means we're recording to this clip. So I can go ahead and play some extra notes and it will record it to this existing clip. Right, easy as that. And then we can jump out of record and now that has been added to that clip. Of course, we can turn on the metronome. There's a metronome button. So if we hit this and start playback, we have that metronome. And again, you can control the metronome level with this Q level here. You can turn it all the way down, or we can have it being very subtle. Right, and you can assign the Q volume to whatever you want. It can be the preview in your browser. You can even set certain things, certain clips to be sent to the queue and not the audience if you want to preview stuff while you're playing live. So this is a super handy knob to have right here. And of course we have the tap tempo button here. So the tempo of your project can change. If you start tapping this tempo, the tempo will change. So let's find the tempo we have now. 2, 3. Right? But we could slow this down. Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So just by tapping this tempo, we've slowed down the tempo of our whole project. Super handy to have right there. And then you can also use these nudge buttons to increment your tempo up and down temporarily. Okay, so this is very handy if you're falling behind while you're playing live, or you're trying to match a live player or a musician or drummer, whatever it is. You have these nudge buttons to temporarily move your tempo up and down. All right, the third set of parameters I want to talk about are what are called device controls. So if we go ahead and select our drum track, for example, we can actually control the devices of the track we have selected automatically on these 8 knobs. Okay, so you'll notice that we have 8 little knobs in the left-hand corner here that correspond to the effects of our drum. So I'm just going to solo this and play our drum loop. Okay, and these 8 controls have automatically mapped themselves to our drums. All right, so cool little process to follow if ever you want to edit the parameters of a device on a track with the APC40 is simply select the track. So right now I have our drum track, and then make sure that detail view is on. So we have a little detail view button here. If we hit that, you'll notice that detail view appears in Ableton. And then when that is selected, then these 8 knobs have automatically mapped themselves to the first 8 parameters that you will find on that track. All right, so I've gone ahead and added a drum bus to this drum channel just to demonstrate that you can hit these 2 arrows to navigate different devices. So the combination of popping up detail view, selecting tracks, and then going left and right, you can navigate pretty much any device in your session and play around with different parameters really quick without having to menu dive with your mouse. So this is super handy. So let's say you want to change this, move down the saturation, go to this other device, let's kick up the drive, right? The boom maybe, find it. There we go, turn up the boom. And an added bonus is if you have a push to whatever device you're selecting here, will reflect itself on the LCD screen here, so you can actually see what you're adjusting in more detail. All right, the fourth set of controls and parameters I want to talk about are the clip and session controls. Okay, so if we look at the APC40, you'll notice that we have a 5x8 section of clip slots, of buttons to play with that represent exactly the same thing as session view in Ableton. So if I switch over here, okay, you'll notice that these buttons on the APC40 are reflected by that yellow rectangle there. Okay, so if I move with this bank select, you can actually select a different amount of clips. You can go left, right, up and down, and you'll notice that the APC40 reflects whatever active clips that you have in your session as you move with this yellow rectangle. So it's super handy to navigate your session and play different clips and play around with different things. All right, and just like session view, you can use all of these different buttons on the APC40 to start playback of clips, to stop playback of clips, to record clips, and all of that fun stuff. So let's do a little quick demo of that. So real quick, you can hit a clip slot that has a clip recorded in it to play it. Okay, so instead of hitting play here, you can actually just play what's going on. All right, another thing I want to point out is we have these stop clip buttons here underneath each track. So if, for example, I wanted to stop the keys on this track too, let's switch back over to the hands. So let's say I wanted to stop these keys here, I could hit this stop clip button, and just like that, our keys have stopped. If I wanted to restart that clip, this clip right here, all I have to do is hit it and it starts playing. Right, we can stop the drums, we can stop the keys, start them both up again. Easy as that. Another handy feature that the APC40 has is launching what are called scenes. So in Ableton, if you launch what is called a scene, it will trigger every single clip in a horizontal row. So if I wanted to, let's say, play these two clips, let's say this was the first part of my song, instead of hitting these two clips, I could hit the rightmost button here and launch the entire scene at the same time. And let's say that my track 3 and 4, these two clips here, were a different part of the song. I could hit this other scene to trigger this horizontal row, right? So on and so forth. If you had a third scene, you could launch them there. But let's go back to the first one. And finally, there's a button here to stop every clip. So if you just want to stop everything, just go ahead and hit that button and all your clips will be stopped. All right, so the combination of being able to select tracks, record clips directly, play clips, stop clips, record enable stuff. If you have another MIDI controller, such as the Push 2 or just a simple MIDI keyboard, then it is super powerful to be able to change tracks on the fly while playing your keyboard, play different clips, record different clips. You can record into existing clips, record new ones, stop them, play them, arrange scenes, all of that great stuff, all hands-on control. All right, the next set of controls I'm going to talk about are what are called global controls. So a few handy things, we looked at a few of these already. So as you move around with these bank select buttons, it moves that yellow rectangle in session view, and the information is displayed here. So as we move around, the tracks that are represented on the APC40 change depending on where you are in your session. So right now, these first 4 tracks are represented by the first 4 clips that we've been playing with. However, if I move over to, now these 2 tracks are representing track 3 and 4. So you see how that works, right? You can navigate your session for as many tracks as you want. And a quick trick is you can hold shift and move a whole set of banks at the same time. Okay, so instead of moving one track at a time, you could just hold shift and move a whole bank of tracks. Just so you can stay organized, I prefer moving with the shift key so that this would be 1 to 8, and then if you bank over, this would be 9 to whatever, 16, so on and so forth. Another super handy thing with the APC40 is these 2 little buttons over here where you can toggle the detail view on and off. as well as the clip views. So this is where a combination with the push 2 comes in, where I can move individual clip slots with the push 2 here. And if you go over a clip, you'll notice the information pops up and we can toggle this on and off with this button. This brings up the clip view, and then this brings up the detail view with all your devices. So this is super handy to have real quick. Instead of always having to go down here, you can just toggle it on and off with these buttons. All right, and the final set of parameters, the fifth set of controls I want to talk about are some pro tips to go along with the APC40 to really unlock it to another level. So number one is you can actually change the global quantization with the APC40. All right, so for anyone who doesn't know, global quantization, as nerdy as that sounds, is very simple. All it does is it changes the amount of time that Ableton will react to play a clip once you've triggered it. Okay, so by default, it is 1 bar. Let's hop back over to the DAW, and you can see the global quantize setting is up here in the top left-hand corner. This drop down is what you can change with the APC, but it defaults to 1 bar, which is useful for most cases. Whereas when you trigger a clip, it's going to take a bar before it starts playing the clip. So let me show you a quick example of that. Let's play the drums. Let's turn off the metronome and let's launch the clip for our keys. And you'll notice that once I press the button, it's going to wait until the next bar to play it. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then it lands on the 1. Same for stopping a clip. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, right? And then it starts or stops on the 1. And we can change the amount of time directly from the APC40. So if we hold shift, you'll notice that, again, similarly to when we held the sends button here, when we hold shift here, you'll notice that the track select button changes. And this is telling you that we are in the global quantization setting. So right now we're at 1 bar, so that's the default, but we can change this to being a quarter note, an eighth note, a 16th note, or none. None is really fun. All right, so notice if we hold shift and hit a different track select button, it changes the global quantization setting at the top left-hand corner. So right now it's a bar, this would be none, right? And we can go to 8 bars, which would be a very long time, or we can go to 16th notes, back to a bar. So that is a cool little tip. All right, so another super handy pro tip with the APC40 is plugging in a foot controller, such as this, directly into the APC40, and it has some really useful features directly plugged in with any old MIDI foot controller. All right, so directly plugged in, we can actually tap it once to record to the clip slot that is playing. So right now, you'll notice that we have our drum clip selected. So let's go ahead and play it. And if I tap this controller once, it's going to directly record to that clip. All right, so let's give that a shot. All right, so now we're recording to that clip just from hitting that foot pedal. All right, so we added those symbols, and then you can hit it again to stop recording. So it is super handy to do that with your feet. Instead of having to reach for the session record button, you can simply just select a clip, hit the foot, and add some notes real quick. All right, so another super handy feature with a MIDI foot controller plugged into the APC40 is you can double tap it to move to the next clip slot down. So for example, if I play these keys and then double tap this controller, it will automatically select the next clip slot underneath. And then again, I can just tap it once to start recording a new clip, all with your feet. All right, so let's give that a go. Let's play this. I'll double tap it. It'll move down the clip slot, and then we'll record a new clip into the keys, okay? All right, so I'm gonna double tap this. So notice how it selected the next clip slot. And now when I'm ready, let's say I want to record that. Let's give it a go, 1 tap. Tap it again to finish. Boom. All right, so that's super handy to stay in flow when you have ideas and moving around and play around with things instead of always having to click over here or mess around with that. Just use your feet. All right, and now for the final pro tip with the APC40 is that you can use custom mapping along with the Ableton custom script that comes built in with the APC40. So what do I mean by that is that you can actually map anything that you want to any of these controls without overriding the automatic mapping and just changing the controls you have. So for example, if you have a push 2 or another MIDI controller that has some of these controls already and it's kind of redundant, well, you can actually map any of these buttons or knobs or faders to anything in your session, and then all of the other controls will stay automatically mapped, which is super powerful. So we can actually go into our preferences, make sure that you're in link tempo MIDI, and we're going to go to the MIDI ports, and we're going to go to the in of the APC40, and you want to make sure that remote is on. Okay, you need to make sure that this setting is on, and that's going to allow you to override any single MIDI control with your APC40. All right, so from here, you can simply go into your MIDI mapping and map anything to anything. Okay, so let's say you had a button here and you wanted to map it to trigger a clip slot, or you wanted it to turn on an effect, whatever it is, you can map it from here. And then once it's mapped, that specific button or knob or fader that you've mapped will be custom mapped, and then everything else will stay the same, which is super handy. Another quick thing I should mention is that you can device lock these 8 parameters to a specific device. So let's say that you had something like Tornado on your master bus. All right, so let's say we had something like Tornado on our master bus. Okay, so let's bring it up. This is a great effect, by the way. And to map any third-party plugins in Ableton, you have to hit this little arrow and make sure to hit configure. And now Ableton is listening for any knob or parameter that you hit. Let's hit these 8 knobs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Great, now they're mapped to Ableton, so we can map them in Ableton. Next, what we want to do is we're going to group this, so Command G to group this Tornado, just so we can have these macro controls. Okay, and then we're going to map each of these to their own macro controls, so 1 to 1, 2 to 2, etc. And let's say we wanted to control them with these 8 knobs. Well, if we're on the master track, great. It'll default to these controls, but let's say I wanted these controls to always be Tornado because I have a push 2, or I don't need to control every single device. I just want these to be locked to Tornado. That's where you can hit device lock. And now these 8 knobs are locked to Tornado, right? So if I go over here, these are still controlling Tornado, as you can see, right? But I'm on this drum track. So now if I'm playing this drum track, I can do all sorts of crazy effects. All sorts of fun stuff like that. Okay, and you can also do the same thing with these 8 top knobs in the user mode. These can be mapped to absolutely anything, and you can access them when you're in user mode. So you can go back over here, mess with your panning, mess with your sends, and then user mode can be anything. Okay, it can be like filters or effects or global things, whatever you want. It just gives you 8 extra knobs of control. Hells yeah. And hey, if you're just getting started with music production and feeling completely overwhelmed by the whole process, or if you've been at this for a while but are having trouble finishing projects, or if you just want to get a glimpse inside my personal workflow, I've created a super easy to follow 7-step framework that takes you from your very first ideas to arranging a song, editing, mixing, and mastering it so you can finish the whole process. Super handy to have around the studio as a printout. So if you're interested in grabbing that, you can find it in the description box below. And that wraps it up for this video. I just wanted to give you a sneak peek into the APC40, show you its capabilities. It is actually super powerful in terms of getting more tactile control with Ableton. It automatically maps. You've seen all the power. So if you've been thinking about grabbing one of these, I can definitely recommend it to you. It is awesome. I use it every single day. And if you have one, I hope that this was useful for you to unlock some of its hidden features and powerful stuff. And let me know, what kind of MIDI controller do you use with Ableton? Do you have the Push 2? Do you have APC40? Do you have something else? I'd love to know in the comments below. And with that said, I will leave you and love you, and we'll see you in the next video.